Hey there, nostalgia lovers! Welcome to Nostalgia Area. Remember the simple joy of hopping from square to square with chalk dust on your hands? What if I told you that innocent playground game may have begun as a training exercise for burly Roman soldiers? Yup, many of the games we played as kids have bizarre and sometimes downright creepy histories. Today, we're putting 10 classic games under the microscope. Some of their origins are surprising, a few are disturbing, and all of them will make you question what you thought you knew about your childhood. By the end, the playground may never look the same again. Let's kick off with Hopscotch, the game that taught kids balance, coordination, and how to argue over whose turn it really was. For generations, children have scratched grids into the pavement, tossed a marker, and hopped their way to glory.
Hopscotch is a fun kids game where players try to get all the way across a hopscotch board.
But one popular legend places the very first hopscotch courts not on schoolyards, but on Roman military training grounds. The original versions were supposedly massive, stretching over 100 feet. Roman foot soldiers, weighed down with armor, would run these courses to improve strength and agility. The story goes that Roman kids copied the soldiers, drew their own smaller versions, added a marker, and boom, hopscotch was born. Even the name may hold clues. Hop is obvious, but scotch may come from the old French word escocher, meaning to scratch, a nod to those lines carved into dirt. From hopping soldiers to singing games, next up is London Bridge is Falling Down. Seems innocent enough until you learn one theory that gives it a seriously grim twist. According to some folklorists, the rhyme may reference immurement, a medieval superstition where builders literally walled someone up alive inside a structure as a human sacrifice.
London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down.
The victim was meant to act as a supernatural watchman, keeping the bridge from collapsing. Creepy, right? Other theories point to Viking attacks in 1014 or just the bridge's constant need for repairs. Either way, suddenly shouting, "Take the key and lock her up, my fair lady,"
Take the key and lock her up, my fair lady,
feels a lot darker than it did on the playground. You've probably heard this one. Ring around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies, and so on. The popular story is that it's about the Great Plague, the rash, the herbs, the ashes of the dead. Kids turning one of history's worst epidemics into a sing-along. Terrifying, right? Well, not so fast. Folklorists say the plague connection is probably a modern myth.
Ring of roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down.
The rhyme didn't appear in print until 1881, more than 200 years after the Plague of London. And early versions don't even mention ashes. They end with a tissue, which could just mean sneezing.
Ring of roses, pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down.
The whole plague theory wasn't suggested until the 20th century. So Ring Around the Rosie probably isn't about death at all. But let's be honest, it's way scarier with the plague version, which is why that myth has stuck around. Red Rover, the game that taught kids teamwork and how it feels to get clotheslined by your classmates. Players formed human chains and dared someone to run and break through. Brutal. Some schools even banned it. One theory says the chant Red Rover was a taunt to Viking raiders, rovers being another word for pirates.
Red Rover, send Cardinal Jordan on over.
But the earliest records of the game don't show up until the 1800s. Historians think it was probably inspired by an 1827 pirate novel called The Red Rover. So, was it a medieval anti-Viking taunt, or just kids acting out pirate fiction? Hard to say, but either way, Red Rover has always been about conflict. If you thought Red Rover was risky, wait until you hear about Mumblety-Peg. This was basically playground knife juggling. A century ago, it was wildly popular among boys and even soldiers. The game involved flipping and tossing a pocket knife so it stuck into the ground. Some versions had players toss it near their own feet. What could possibly go wrong? The loser's punishment was to pull a wooden peg out of the ground with their teeth while mumbling, hence the name. Mark Twain even mentioned it in Tom Sawyer. Unsurprisingly, by the 1970s, Mumblety-Peg was banned from schools and camps, probably for the best. If these stories are making your childhood feel a little less innocent and a lot more bizarre, hit that subscribe button. We've still got 5 more games to go, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. And if you want to relive some of these classic games, minus the creepy backstory, we've linked some retro toy and game sets that'll bring the playground right to your backyard. Many remember the opening lines, "Oranges and lemons say the bells of St. Clement's." But fewer know the sinister ending. Here comes a candle to light your bed, and here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Good night, my sweet child, rest your tired head.
This nursery rhyme, played as a game where an arch of arms captures a player, might be a tour of London's most famous execution path. The theory is that the rhyme lists the churches a condemned prisoner would pass on their way to execution, with the bells tolling to announce the grim procession. The mention of Old Bailey is particularly telling, as it's the site of London's Central Criminal Court, located next to the infamous Newgate Prison. Suddenly, that cheerful little sing-song feels a lot darker. In Blind Man's Bluff, one blindfolded player tries to catch and identify the others. It seems harmless, but its history is complicated. The game dates back at least to Tudor England, where it was played by the courtiers of Henry VIII. In the Victorian era, the game was a popular parlor activity for adults. Some suggest it was a socially acceptable excuse for flirting and physical contact at a time when such interactions were highly restricted. The blindfold allowed for accidental touches that would otherwise be scandalous. So while you might remember it as harmless playground fun, your great-great-grandparents may have been playing for very different reasons. Bashing a colorful papier-mâché figure until it spills candy is a birthday party staple, but its roots may lie in a far more solemn ceremony. One theory traces the piñata to the Aztecs. They would honor the war god Huitzilopochtli by breaking a decorated clay pot filled with treasures at the foot of his idol. When Spanish missionaries arrived in the 16th century, they adapted the practice for religious conversion. The traditional 7-pointed piñata was used to represent the 7 deadly sins. The blindfolded player represented faith conquering evil, and the candy that rained down was the reward from God. So the next time you whack a piñata, remember, you're actually acting out a centuries-old spiritual battle. A straightforward test of strength, Tug of War seems as simple as a game can get. However, its origins are not in sport, but in ancient ritual. The contest is found in cultures all over the world, from ancient Egypt to Korea. In many societies, it was a ceremony to ensure a good harvest or bring rain. For example, in Korea, villagers held ritualistic tug-of-war matches where the outcome was believed to predict the success of the harvest. In some traditions, the two teams represented cosmic forces, like the sun and the moon. It was only later, around 500 BC, in Greece, that it was adapted as a purely physical sport to train athletes. So, next time you see kids pulling a rope, you might actually be watching echoes of ancient rituals for rain and fertility. The frantic scramble for a seat when the music stops is a classic game of elimination. While its exact origins are unclear, some historians believe it may be a folk representation of a much grimmer reality. The game serves as a stark allegory for ruthless competition in times of scarcity, like a famine or economic crisis where there aren't enough resources to go around. Each time a chair is removed, another person is cast out until only one survivor remains. In Germany, the game is even called Reise nach Jerusalem, or Journey to Jerusalem, which some interpret as an allegory for the Crusades, where many set out but few reach their destination. From Roman military drills to ritual battles for a good harvest, the playground is filled with echoes of a stranger, often darker past. These games are like fossils, preserving fragments of ancient rituals and forgotten superstitions. They've been smoothed over by centuries of play, their original meanings lost, leaving behind the innocent fun we remember. But the history is still there, hidden in plain sight. What games were part of your childhood? Do their origins hold any secrets? Share them in the comments below. And if you can't get enough of these strange little corners of history, check out the links below for some great reads and listens. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay nostalgic.